I learned from a guy named Mike Jones. You can frame things that are generally looked at as negative things in a positive way. In this case, being content is kind of a neutral word, but you can frame it in a positive and a negative way. So I think you can be content in a positive way, meaning, oh man, things are really good right now, I'm kind of content. But that can also be a negative thing if you're not striving to improve and to drive and to work forward.
So we worked through it. We got married. Mitch had a full ride scholarship down to SUU.
That hadn't started yet because I was supposed to go on a mission.
But they moved it up for you.
Well, they were going to look at moving it up. So the stipulation was, we had it all set up for, golly, I think it was 2006 when it was supposed to start.
That was the year that we got married.
And that was the year we ended up getting married. So essentially I was only a year early.
Yeah.
So they wanted me to walk on and then see how things went. And then if I was a good fit, then they would move the scholarship up.
But they ended up covering your semester down there.
No, we paid for that out of our pocket.
Well, maybe you did. I don't remember doing that.
So
okay.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. We got pregnant because we got married in January.
Yeah, found out we were expecting in March.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Maddie.
And then you wanted to be up here with your mom and my mom and grandparents to help with raising the first. And so we blew off the scholarship and came up here. We lived in West Jordan initially, right? Yeah. On Redwood Road and 9300 South in that old white house.
That white house had like pink walls and plastic tiles on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And like this teal wallpaper with like these birds on it and wool carpet. I was so grateful to be there because we had a house. I was so happy to like find a new place to live after we lived there for 6 months.
I don't want to give the wrong impression. I don't think that I was ever going to be successful in a university. I mean, just that one semester, I think I only got a passing grade on 2 of the 5 or 6 classes that I had. The football schedule and trying to earn some kind of an income, and then you had school. As human beings, we all have a list of priorities, right? And number 1 priority was football. Number 2 priority was making some type of an income, and school came last. And so, I mean, I'm not a university, not the type of person that's very successful in a university.
Well, we came home for Easter and we announced to both of our families that we were expecting and that we were giving up the scholarship to move back up to Salt Lake. And we don't need to get in the weeds of it, but do you remember how that weekend went?
Oh yeah. No, it was rough.
It was really rough. I don't know how much more to say, but it was a rough weekend. There was a lot of really harsh words said. And I guess some people's dreams were broken.
Yeah, well,
at that time.
To be fair, my parents, they struggled financially. They both had to work extremely hard to make ends meet. And, and they were both blue collar. And so I get it. Like their only experience was barely making ends meet, barely getting by. And that was working, a full-time job plus a part-time job, both of them, And so they didn't want us to have that struggle. They didn't look at blue collar work as a means to become very successul.
Yeah.
My parents, I'd say more my mom and her side of the family, they put a lot of value, and rightfully so, on a college education and white collar work, I mean, because that's, if you look at the statistics, that's the way to go. If you really want to make a good living without having to break your back, that's what you want to do, and that's what they wanted for us. The problem is I get really easily distracted by shiny objects, and I can't really pay attention to textbooks, so that didn't really work out too good for me. So we moved back up here. Our scholarship was down in Cedar City, down to Southern Utah University. We got pregnant with our first. We moved up here to West Jordan, and then I had to weigh my options. I thought about maybe going to a school up here and trying to pursue an education of that route, but after having done one semester already and realizing that I wasn't going to be successful in a university environment, I immediately thought about going into the trades, because I do like to work with my hands, and I'm not afraid to work hard, and I'm not afraid to get dirty. That's pretty much what I've been doing anyway. Even if somehow by some miracle or act of God I was able to get a university education, I would have still been out working in the garage, constantly all my time off. So
Mitch has always been one to tinker. He'd go to like the scrap yard and pick up motorcycle parts and restore dirt bikes. He did that all through high school. He did that from the boneyard and even fixed up one for me, which was way too big for me, but we sold it.
Yeah.
And we just found ways to make money, and I guess staying busy was one of them that worked well for us.
So I immediately went to Gerald, so BreAnn's dad, previously on the podcast, and he had some recommendations. He knew some people, one of which was Jared, his brother. At the time, he was a foreman. I don't know if we'd call him a foreman or a superintendent for Lane Myers Construction Custom Homes. He now is part owner of Landmark West up in Heber City. But I was really looking at becoming either a plumber or an electrician. And
you didn't want to be a turd herder.
I didn't want to be a turd herder, because in order to be a good plumber, you only need to know 3 things.
What's that?
3 things. Shit flows downhill. Don't eat anything off the floor of your truck, and paydays on Friday.
Yeah, those are the key components of a plumber.
I was always intrigued by electrical. I would do little electrical projects around the house for my mom growing up, and it just kind of seemed to come naturally to me. So I figured we'd give that a shot. So my first job in my electrical career was for a company called ProStar Electric, and they did residential new construction for Lane Myers Construction, which is who Jared worked for. So I did that for...
And that was mainly new construction. So
yeah, it was
roping homes and...
all new construction. I think that's all I did the couple of months I was with them. I was only with them for a couple of months and found a good opportunity to go into more commercial type work. So I got a job doing that, did that for a couple of years, and then kind of bounced around to several different companies doing more like the heavier commercial industrial type work. And then during the last recession, right after Obama got elected, it didn't really hit Utah until about 2009, 2010. But commercial, it just kind of dropped off. And then BreAnn's grandfather, Leon Higgins, so Gerald's father.
Well, that whole year was rough. So we were expecting our 3rd child, and at that time you were maybe getting 8 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was picking up any odd job that he could possibly do, whether it was side work, going and doing can lights for neighbors, like whatever we could possibly do to make ends meet. also working at the body shop. You were cleaning bathrooms, you were sweeping floors, like you were doing whatever you could possibly do just to help us get ends to meet.
Yeah, basically from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or later every day, just to
Well, it was later because you were also
Yeah.
going to school in the evenings.
and school. Yeah, on top of that, those were busy years. I'm glad I did it when I was younger.
Yeah.
So after the market crashed, and I was like the that type of work just evaporated. It seemed like overnight. I was only getting anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week at that job, at the company I was employed with at the time. And so I quit that because it wasn't working. I ended up just going to work full time at the body shop, just as basically a maintenance man for my father-in-law, for Gerald, for about 6 months. And that's when Gerald's father, Leon, took me up to Heber City to introduce me to some individuals up there in the sand and gravel, and asphalt and mining, just mining in general. Heavy industrial, electrical work. And that's when I started the career that eventually became our business. So
Yeah, that week you had been working at Grandma and Grandpa's house. I think my dad had, you kind of got caught up on everything. And so you were at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and they have a bunch of pictures down their hallway. And so they were having you add spotlighting.
yeah, it was track lights.
Yeah, track lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my grandpa's a photographer by hobby, and he also does a lot of photos for a couple of construction companies still now that he's retired, and it's been a way for them to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2012, that was the year that we were expecting our last baby, Tucker, and who just turned 13, by the way. But I found some lots on 2200 West in South Jordan that were initially bank owned, and then somebody bought them, and he was in like a hard money lending situation, and they still didn't sell. So we ended up finding out who he was. I got online, figured out who owned that parcel. I had to call the Utah State Tax Commission to figure out who owned the parcel. They got me in contact with him, and we were able to purchase those lots. My brother built his house in South Jordan, and then we built ours. That was my favorite year of my marriage. I was pregnant, I was building cabinets, and that was probably one of your hardest years.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, still trying to make an income, right? But also we're trying to build as much of the house as we could for sweat equity, which in the long run made it so we could start a business. Because of all that equity, we were able to cash out that equity and use that money to start our business. So, I mean, it was all a means to a beginning, not an end.
Yeah.
And it was hard because I was used to working a lot, but I was working even more than a lot, and it was 7 days a week. Well, I guess probably 6 days a week. We'll be fair. I don't think we did much on Sundays, but yeah, it was a lot. I just remember being extremely tired, and then when it was done, it was like just a huge relief.
Yeah, it was. So we lived there in that home for 10 years. And then we decided about year 8 is when we started our business. And what finally, I guess, pushed you over the edge to do that?
To start the business?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, we had talked about it for years. In fact, we had talked about it before we even decided to do electrical work. We were like, okay, what career could you pursue that we could one day start a business doing, right?
Yeah.
You remember that? We even had that conversation with your father, Gerald, and he was, of the same mind that electrical would be the best one to pursue. And then, as an electrician, you go to school 2 nights a week as an apprentice for 4 years. Took me 5 years because I failed one semester. I had to retake it, and if you fail a semester, you have to retake the entire year because you have to. If you fail a semester, you can't take the next semester, so you basically lose 2 semesters. So which is a
Yeah.
fiscal year, or not a fiscal year, but a annual year. Or during that 4 years as an apprentice, you work your normal 40 plus hours a week, and you go to school 2 nights a week for 2 semesters, for a total of 8 semesters, right? So 4 years, and you get your 8,000 hours of on-the-job training, and then you have to pass a test. It's called a competency exam at the end of each semester. So 8 tests, right? And then after your apprenticeship is done, you have to take 3 state tests in order to get your journeyman's license. So there's a code test, a theory test, and a practical hands-on test. So if you can pass all 3 of those tests, then you can apply for your journeyman's license, which is you have to verify all of your hours through your previous employers with your certificate of your grades and completion of school. And then the state will issue you a journeyman's license. And then at that point, you can be done and just do your continuing education every other year, or you can decide to pursue a master's electrical license, which can be achieved through one of 2 ways. The first would be if while you were going to school, you also took some other elective classes, you can get an Associates of Applied Science, and then you can take your master's test after 2 years of having had your journeyman's license. Or the route I went, because I didn't have any extra time to take any more elective classes, I just waited the 4 years. I think we actually waited 5 years.
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years.
5 years, and then I took my master's tests and got my master's license that way. So in 2019, I got my master's license officially.
Yeah.
So
That was fun. That was a fun year. We had really proactively began gathering information for our business. That year, you had also created our logo, and you kind of had in mind what we were going to call the business. Mm-hmm. And so that was just kind of fun to see things come to be. I
don't think anybody really understands how much us running or actually starting a business is due to you.
Probably
a lot
just a little bit.
a lot of the things that got done strictly because BreAnn had, in no uncertain terms, put those expectations on me.
Yes. Well, I think it's because I know your potential, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think we do well together because you're the goofy one, you're the playful one, and I'm the serious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to the book one. And so I think we complement each other well, but when Mitch tells me he's going to do something, I expect it. And sometimes I'm like the slave driver getting it done, but
I'm the procrastinator. I'm a professional.
But I think it's played out the way it's supposed to. I think we have a pretty good life.
Well, absolutely, because I always tell people that when they ask, well, how did you do it? How did you start a business? How are you guys so successful? I'm like, well, it wasn't me, I mean, I definitely was there, and I definitely did the things, but it was only because of my wife that we're there.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
We've definitely had some of our best years and some of our hardest years together. Just growing a family, raising our kids, and starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting teary-eyed?
No.
Oh, okay.
I got allergies.
Okay, good excuse. So we decided that we were going to start our business. That was also the year that we told Maddie that she had to come up with a contribution to get a horse. It was crazy. It was one of those years where we just went all in, full throttle. I think we choose everything in life to make it the hardest way possible.
That's the way I've kind of conceptualized it. I feel like through each phase or stage of life, we've adopted voluntarily as much responsibility as humanly possible at every stage.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. I mean, it was like right up from the time we decided to get married. It's like, okay, let's get married. All right. Okay, let's buy a house. Okay, well, not in that order, right? And then let's have kids. All right, let's have 4. You know.
Yeah, we had 4, 5, and under.
Just you name it. It's like we went for it. I mean, we had gotten married, we had our first child, and we had bought our first house all before we were 21.
Yeah.
All before I was 21.
All before you were 21.
Before we could even rent a car.
Oh, I know. I thought that was hilarious. We had so much responsibility on the line every day, but for us to go out of town and rent a car, we couldn't rent a car. We had 4 kids before we were 25. And
How did we did that trip to that poor people's trip to Florida where we couldn't afford to do anything? How did we even get a rental car?
Oh, I think they had to do like $1,000 security deposit that had to come out of our checking account. And we weren't planning on that. And so they took that money out of our account. And so we were literally broke for a week.
Yeah, we had no money to do anything. So we had a hotel room and we just drove around.
Yeah, I walked on the beach.
That was it.
It was fun.
It wasn't bad.
But I think it was also a good time to like reflect and think about like what we wanted our future to look like. Because I think I wasn't happy. I guess I was happy, but I wasn't happy with.
You weren't content.
I was not content.
Yeah.
So do you think being content is normal, or do you think it's good to?
I think there's 2 different. It depends on how you frame it. So I learned from a guy named Mike Jones that you can frame things in a positive. You can frame things that are generally looked at as negative things in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
So, in this case, being content is kind of a neutral word, but you can frame it in a positive and a negative way, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can be content in a positive way, meaning, oh man, things are really good right now. I'm kind of content. But that can also be a negative thing if you're not striving to improve and to drive and to work forward, to move forward. Because I think when people hear like you're satisfied or you're content, it basically you're saying that you're just kind of coasting and you're not really trying to improve your station in life.
Like, so you're afraid of risking failure and you're just happy with the status quo and you're not willing to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the time when we were going to start the business. I remember that was just the most terrifying thing. You know, it was just, for me, it was the craziest, most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. Remember not being able to sleep, hardly being able to eat, and for me, that's a huge deal because I love to eat.
Well, we thought we had security
and,
before we started, right? And
yes.
I think that's kind of what threw us.
But that to your point, right? You have to kind of reframe the way you think about your fears. Because for me, my fear was I've got a great job, I've got an awesome family, I can support them. Things are going well. We don't have a lot of extra money, but I mean, we're able to go on vacations. We're able to pay our house payment. We're able to put food on the table. We're not going into debt. So it's like, man, we're doing it right. And then to just completely flip the table over and say, okay, we're gonna quit that job that's funding this whole operation, and we're just gonna mortgage our house to the teeth and we're going to throw all that money at a business that may or may not work.
Yes.
And so,
Well, until that time, we had lived so frugally. I feel like we did. Like, we stretched every dollar as far as we could possibly stretch it. I bought everything on sale, clearance, used, thrifted stuff. Like, I repurposed everything in my life just to make sure that my kids had exactly what they needed and that we weren't going into debt for anything. And so we were pretty good. Like, I honestly felt like things were fine. And then we refinanced and we pulled out everything. And I budgeted the numbers and tried to see exactly what we'd need for at least 6 months to just keep our crap together, food on the table, and everything that our kids would need to survive, and to pay our utilities.
oh, and you remember we prepared crock pot meals. How many?
Well, that was funny too, because that was before you went up on your trip, right? So
That was before I flipped the table over.
Yeah, before Mitch flipped the table over. So I have 4 kids. I still work. We were homeschooling the kids at the time. Life was crazy. I never knew where Mitch was going to be working, if he was going to be in town, out of town. If he was out of town, I would just load up and head out to see him when I could. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this crock pot dinner meal thing. So I got a bunch of recipes. I had done like citrus pear, I believe it is, where you can go and prepare meals and then buy a few miscellaneous things to put them together. And I was like, I can do this, but I don't really like any other recipes. So I'm going to get my own recipes and I'm going to doctor them up the way I like them. And I did that. And I way overbought some groceries. I had to go buy a few more things. We ended up with nearly 60 freezer meals. It filled our entire chest freezer full of dinners. And that was like our saving grace that year.
That was like the only way we could have done it.
Because we were working from the moment we woke up until like we were exhausted.
Yeah, it was 6 to 7 in the morning till 10, 11 at night every day.
But we were also using credit cards. Like, we had to figure out how to budget credit cards. I remember we started buying stuff online.
It was so scary.
And
we were never people to overspend on credit cards. And when you're starting a business,
we were maxing those puppies out like monthly, like weekly. It was so bad.
I remember when, back then, if you spent $1,000, it was a huge purchase, and you'd have to like budget for it, and we'd have to talk about it. And running a business, $1,000, is nothing.
Oh yeah.
Like we spend. Well, how much do we spend average daily on our business?
Oh, let's not give them numbers right now, but a lot.
I mean, a lot more than $1,000.
Oh yeah.
And when we from the onset of the business, when you're buying all the materials and tools that you need to start your business, it was like.
I still remember.
I had to like remove that mental block out of my head that says you can't spend thousands of dollars. That's like dumb.
Well, credit to Mitch. He always worked really good with my budgeting habits. So when it was over $100, he checked in, and we always knew where our money was. And so
because I think that's important to distinguish, because we don't have separate accounts. Like, all of our money is in one account.
It's always been that way.
We've always budgeted together.
And we've always put a limit on like your spending credit card, and I knew where my limits were, but we would check in.
And we'd pay them off every month.
But I think it was like mental gymnastics to go from this is what our income is and this is what we can actually live on this month to, okay, we're creating opportunity. We are investing in our future, and we're providing a service to our customers. And so money was just like flying out the door. I think we opened up our first Amazon Prime account just so we could buy tools and some stuff. And I remember we spent, I think, about 10 grand on just stuff that we needed to run our business. And our cute little UPS guy or whatever packed our front door like to the ceiling. I opened up the door and I couldn't even see out. It was just boxes. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And that happened a few times.
Yeah, we should have bought stock in Milwaukee.
Yeah, we should have.
We have a
So
lot of Milwaukee tools.
we had a beautiful home in South Jordan, and that was really hard to move from because I had drawn up the floor plans. I'd even like sketched what I wanted the front elevation of the home to look like. I had given it to my uncle, and I said, I would like you to be the general on this. And he was great. He got the paperwork done, but he let me be so involved in building the home. And we lived there, and I got to build the cabinets with my grandpa. We laid the tile. I mean, I was 9 months pregnant the day that we moved into that house. We had Tucker about 3 days after we moved in. And it was a fun year. I had a lot of fun, but it was just a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And then how did we end up coming down here? This house was the house that you had been taking pictures of and talking to me about.
Yeah, so your brother Matt built his house in the neighborhood adjacent to where we live.
In Sage Vista.
And it was right after I started the business, and we don't do residential work. Our business doesn't do residential work, but from the onset of the business, I didn't know how busy we were going to actually be. So I was like, well, that'll be a good job, because he didn't really have a deadline. So he's like, yeah, go ahead, because he knows I do good work, and I do know how to do residential work. But our business itself doesn't do residential
That's not
work.
the bread and butter of our company.
It's not what we do.
Yeah.
It's not what we're, pride ourselves on, or what we're efficient at. But so he's like, yeah, go ahead. We'll figure out what it is, and we'll just do that. And so I took that job on, and so we were doing that just when we didn't have other more pressing things to do. And we got it done in a pretty timely manner, and we passed our four-way the first time, which was cool. Or our electrical inspection the first time, and the four-way, I guess. But and so I remember driving on 1100 West here to get to his house, and this house was just being built, and the shop was in the back. They built the shop first, and they were living in the apartment in the shop, and I was just looking at that shop like, oh my gosh, like that would be the most bitchin' electrical shop out there. Like, it's got 5 bays, it's deep. You could store all your tools and materials. You could do all the building that you need to do in house. You could do it there. Plus, there's a huge parking lot for all your employees to park in. Plus, there's horse property for all of our stinking horses that we have, and so it was like perfect. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of horses; we only had 2. But I was like, man, if that place ever went up for sale, like that would be like the perfect place.
You also have to understand, though, Mitch wasn't one to even look at homes, right? That's always been my thing. I'd always point out, like, the new neighborhood or the new home going in. And Mitch, until this time, had never paid attention to a house. But there he was, every time he's coming down to work on my brother's house, he's taking pictures of this property. So in the back of my mind, I knew this property always existed. And the joke was, that house is never going to sell.
Yeah. So luckily, we started the business, and things were going really well. We were super busy. We were making money. But our old house in South Jordan with the 4-car garage was just not big enough. It was bursting at the seams. So it
was a 3-car with a tandem, so it was 4. But
it was 4.
Yeah.
But we were building panels in there. We were storing materials in there. We were storing some tools, plus all of the stuff, all of our stuff.
Yeah.
All of our personal stuff. I mean, that garage, for the last couple of months we were there, we couldn't even park in the garage because we had so much stuff going on inside for the business. And so we're like, we've either got to find a commercial building and stay here, or we need to find a residential area that has a nice big shop that'll allow us to run a business out of, right? So And it was at that exact same time when your brothers called. I think it was Matt, right?
Yeah.
He
Well,
called.
we had been looking at a home down in Salem,
Yeah.
and we had even taken our kids to go look at the home. And when our kids walked through that house, we had kind of told them where each one of their rooms were going to be. And we went out and looked at the barn, and this house even had a pool, and it had enough property that we had planned to build a shop. And as we're walking up the driveway, me and Mitch looked at each other, and it was seriously like, this isn't it. Which was so weird because we had gotten to the point that we were taking our kids there, we were ready to put in an offer, and we backed out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And my brothers called, and we kind of told them, hey, yeah, we didn't do it. And they're like, well, when's moving day? We really thought you guys were excited about this house, and we were. But we backed off. And the next day, my brothers are like, you've got to get down here. That house that Mitch has always had his eye on, they put a for sale sign.
And your brothers, they had their eye on it too.
Oh yeah, my brothers did too.
Yeah, because they thought it was awesome too.
Yeah, but they saw the sign the day it went in, and then that just kind of, that's when the roller coaster started again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's when we came and looked at it several times with the realtor, and then several times just driving by after a long day of work. We just like, let's go look at that house, and then getting financed for a property of this size is not a small thing. It was a pretty lengthy process.
It was pretty fast considering. So
Well,
we'd worked
as compared to just a traditional home mortgage, right?
Yeah, there was just lots of ducks to get in order, and when you are a small business owner and you're self-employed, things just get a little more complicated. And what was super fun about that whole situation, the house went up for sale. We had started our business in October. By the time we purchased the home, we had only been in business just over 24 months. And to qualify for a home, generally, you have to be in business for 24 months before a bank will even look at you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I like to say it was divine timing, because it was just like everything just fell into place exactly when it did. Yeah. Providential timing, I guess.
It was perfect. We were the first people to look at it. We were the first people to put an offer, and they accepted the offer.
We negotiated once, but
but essentially they accepted the offer. And then the next day they had 2 full price offers.
Yeah.
So, but they had already accepted ours, so the rest is history.
They honored it, and I'm just so grateful for them and the way they set this home up, because it was exactly everything that I had been drawing up and trying to envision for our family. And we were able to move to Lehi, and we were able to move closer to family. I've only got 2 brothers, and they were already here, and I have cousins, and you've got extended family here too. So Lehi was home. So we decided to start our business, and we moved to we started our business in South Jordan, and it was so fun because Mitch had a coworker that just kept showing up after work and asking questions. And I think he was so shocked that we were even considering starting a business, because it's scary, right?
Well, I would always talk about it with him, Robert. I would always talk about it with him while we were at my previous employer, and he said, "Man, if you ever do it," he's like, "You're freaking crazy if you do, but if you do, I'll be your first employee." And I held him to it.
Well, he did, and it was so cute because we hadn't even made it 30 days, and he's like, "I'm ready to come and work for you guys." And at this point, I'm like, cash is getting tight. We've got money just flying out the door, and we're still waiting to get paid.
Yeah, we should explain how that works.
Yeah, so when you're dealing with large construction companies, and I think construction in general, it's common to have 30, 60, or 90-day payment terms for them, even when you're a small company. And so that absorbed a ton of cash trying to make sure we could plan for the future. And so we we were throwing money out the door, and we had like our receivables, and our receivables were growing. And, so we knew that accounts receivable, we were eventually going to start.
For people who don't know what receivables are money that is owed to you that you don't have yet.
Yes.
So if we do, say, a project that takes 30 days as a good round number, and you have all of your upfront costs, so you have all your payroll, your insurance, all the materials for that project, all that and I'm forgetting things, but all that you pay for up front, right? And then you don't bill that at least we don't. I don't know how other people do it. We don't bill that project out until it's 100% complete. And then that's when your clock starts.
Yes.
So depending on your customer, whatever your payment terms are, you don't get all of that money that just went out the door from the onset. You don't see a return on that for 30 to 90 days later.
Yes. There's just a bunch of moving parts to running a business, and then you're going all in, just making sure that you're providing for your family and you're trying to cover all of your bases. And then you realize that you've got more work than you can handle. So we gladly accept to hire on Robert, and it was great. At the time, he was a single dad, and so he was working absolutely crazy hours. And I loved his boys, and so I got to have them over when Robert was working late, when it was his turn, and it was just...
And he was working the same hours we were.
Yes.
I mean, he wasn't doing the administrative side piece of the business
but the labor
at the time,
intensive.
but he was working crazy hours along with us. And what I really liked about it is he's my best male friend. My wife's my best female friend. But being able to work with him and being able to build up our company and our clientele, it really meant a lot to me. He sacrificed a lot for us.
He did.
I mean, he continues to sacrifice a lot for us. And I mean, I don't know any business owner that is successful that doesn't have people like Robert in their corner. No, I mean, it's not. Business owners themselves aren't that special. It's their ability to get people like Robert to come work for him and help him build a business. He's just amazing. He's an amazing person, and it's been a privilege to be his friend. And he helped me with hiring all the other employees that we have now. I mean, Darren was our next acquisition.
Oh, I love Darren.
And,
that's fun. So Darren's stepmom and my grandma are best friends. I remember them as best friends anyway, and they were so fun and giggly, and they always had such a good time. And so we got to hire Darren, and he's been great.
And Darren's our shop manager, and he's just another success story that I just don't know what I would do without him. He came into the industry with no experience whatsoever. I think he was a nurse.
He was a CNA.
Yeah, he was a nurse, and then he worked for the post office. So like, no construction experience.
He had done some stuff with his dad growing up.
Well, yeah. I'm talking like more like like career job. I mean, he obviously had prior experience with working with tools and hand tools and power tools with his dad. But he came in with next to no knowledge about what we do, and now he's literally runs our shop. He builds panels, he reads drawings effortlessly, does amazing work. I mean, and to me, that probably the most rewarding part of starting a business is my relationships with my guys, and being able to watch them improve, and by extension also improving their life with, financial compensation. Because I mean, Robert, as an example, at our previous employer, wasn't even making a journeyman wage because he was an Air Force journeyman, right? And so, the company that we worked for didn't recognize that accomplishment, at least financially. They didn't compensate him as a journeyman because his, I think it's like a DD 14 or 24, or whatever they call it in the military.
Yeah.
His journeyman certificate doesn't translate into a state of Utah journeyman's license. So they were paying him basically an apprentice wage, and he was running projects where he had journeymen working underneath him making more money than he was making. It was absolutely crazy.
I think that's what's been the most rewarding for me, is just to see how we manage things. And then when we have hired employees over the past couple of years, how we've been able to implement employer benefits, whether it's dental, vision, medical, 401k. We match 401k. Like, for a small business, I think we offer a lot to the families that work for us. I know we do. And I'm just glad that they're all proud to work for us, because they show up and they're happy. Mm-hmm. And I think they all got each other's back.
Yeah, I mean, and just being able to get to know them and their families, and being able to see them have some success in their life, and knowing that we had a part to play in that, to me is probably the most rewarding thing. Because I mean, we spend most of our time at work, even to this day.
Yeah.
Even with a certain level of success. Like, when you own a business, that's pretty much it's your livelihood, but it's also your life.
Well, you never get to shut it off being
No.
an owner. Like, you're constantly, I don't want to say worry, but you're anticipating that you've got everything in order to provide.
Oh, I don't ever feel at ease. If I'm being honest, like, we could be completely slammed busy, right? And then I was like, man, I wish it would just slow down a little bit. And then it slows down a little bit, and then you're like, oh crap, hopefully, are we going to have enough work for the next couple weeks? Like, is the work going to stop in a couple weeks? And it never does, but it's just like...
Well, we've had times where it slowed down and we've kept the guys busy,
well, and then
finding projects.
And then you're always worried about things that didn't necessarily go according to plan. And, you heard through the grapevine that so-and-so wasn't happy with something that, one of your guys did. So,
but I think it comes down to communication. And I think that's one thing that you've really tried to hit home with our customers, that you reach out and follow up and really try to have a relationship with them, so you know what's going on and what's happening.
I try to.
Yeah.
As much as I can. We try to follow through and follow up as much as we can. And because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, there's 10 different companies we do work for.
Yeah.
We're a lot different than most electrical contractors, because they'll do businesses, they'll do work for individuals, businesses, and they probably have thousands of clients. Or we have 10
core ones.
10 core companies that we do work for, and it's very important to make sure that those 10 customers are all happy and taken care of, And that's hard. Even with 10 customers, it's a full-time job to make sure that things are going well and that they're happy, and that,
So me and Mitch are definitely a team in our marriage and in our business. And when we started a business, I knew that I had to support him and we had to support each other. But in doing so, I still have my kids to raise. I still want home to be a priority. And so we were just so grateful to move to Lehi and have a home-based business and to run our business here. I was so grateful that I didn't have to distinguish certain parts of my life or compartmentalize home and work and family. Like it's all kind of enmeshed and it works well. And so when we registered our business here, I just felt like everything had finally come to one place where we could grow and that we could take care of our family and our customers. And we don't get very many customers that come to our home. But when we do, most people don't even recognize it as a business.
Well, I think about it, we probably have one customer come to our place of business, like maybe one a month, if that.
If that.
If that. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like we're a thoroughfare by any means. It's usually just guys showing up, grabbing what they need for the job, and then leaving.
Yeah.
That's it. All of our work is off-site for the most part.
But it's this intricate balance where we've really tried to be thoughtful and mindful of our community and our family. And the best way I can support my family is by being available to my teenagers. We've got 4 awesome teenagers that keep us on our toes, that are constantly coming and going. And I think family is important. So I was just grateful to bring everything home and to work here.